Spring, and today we're going to be talking about personality tests like Myers-Briggs and the Enneagram test, and we're also going to be talking about astrology. Today we have Claire, Rhea, and Lindsay to talk about those tests, and by the end of the podcast, we're going to all try to guess what each of them are.
The Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, which is also known as MBTI for short, because that's a mouthful, is a personality test created by Catherine Myers and Isabel Briggs, adapted from Carl Jung's Four Functions theory of the human mind. Under Myers-Briggs, there are 16 personalities with 4 slots of functions. There's introversion versus extroversion, intuition versus sensing, feeling versus thinking, and judging versus perceiving. So it's a really complex test, and it's known for being scarily accurate. The New Yorker rated it the world's most popular personality test, and many workplaces will even use it in like their hiring process. And Ayana, do you want me to go into like the deep theories of like how each function works?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, so the 2 functions that the whole theory are built around are judging and perceiving. So perceiving is how your brain takes in information, and then judging is what you do with those decisions. So then extroversion and introversion are basically just how you get your energy. Extroversion, you love being around people and you get your energy from people, and then introversion, you get your energy from alone time. So then there's sensing and intuition. Now, sensing is very much like things that are in front of you, like gaining information from your 5 senses. And then intuition is kind of you look for patterns and you look for things that aren't definite, and it's more guided by feeling than logic.
It was about because of like the way that we've talked about it in school, and could be for a variety of reasons, but I think that the Myers-Briggs is very inaccurate for a couple of reasons. The first one is that we fill it out, so it's inherently has bias towards it. The second reason is, like we talked about, how young people should exercise caution when taking this test out because they're malleable, their minds are malleable. But our personalities, I like to think, are dynamic. I could be extroverted with one group of people and completely introverted with a group of extroverts. So that's also changing as well. The most important thing for me is that it's not binary. Like one of the questions on it is, you tend to sympathize with others, yes or no? Well, I mean, like, I'm not going to answer no, but I may not be the most sympathetic person, but the Myers-Briggs only allows me to put either yes or no. And then, not to like throw so much information out, but the fourth reason is, I know I was kind of touching on this earlier, but it's what's called the Barnum Effect, I believe. And it's just that you see that everything applies to you. And this is like a really important thing that zodiac signs do, and also like people with like who claim they have psychic powers, and they'll make some broad claim that can apply to everybody, but you think it's really specific to you, so you're like, oh, that's so accurate for me, even though it might not exactly be.
And I agree with that, Rhea. And one of the things that I remember is when they're taking tests is they say be as honest as you can. And so they try to get that correct answer out of you, but there will always be, human error where we want to be the best that we can. And so we answer to the best that we can.
The probability of me actually being a 2 is low because that's what I feel like I should be when I'm really a 4.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I feel like I've taken the Myers-Briggs, I think at least 5 times, and each time I'm pretty sure I've gotten something different, which goes into what Rhea was saying earlier. It's like, it's definitely how you feel in the moment. And I mean, we're definitely dynamic people, so it's not necessarily like that the test is inaccurate. It's just that I'm taking it and I'm interpreting things differently each time, and I want to reflect who I am at the time. But if I want to embody like the perfect moralistic person, I'm going to pick things that go along with the perfect moralistic person. And there's this like thing in statistics, like when you want to ask a survey, when you want to do a survey and ask questions, you have to make sure that your questions aren't leading, because that takes out what results you get. Because there was this one survey that they did not a long time ago, in the past few years, about gun rights in America, and it was used by the NRA. But the question was, do you support the Second Amendment? Do you support your rights to your own things? who's gonna say no? No one's gonna say no to that. But you can definitely push that towards a gun agenda. Do you have the right to defend yourself? You're gonna say yes. Yes, I want the right to defend myself. But you can take that and put that in any kind of way that you want.
I agree with that. Another example that comes to mind is Elizabeth Loftus' study. So she asked a bunch of people. So they showed a group of participants a video of a car colliding with another car, and they asked one group how fast was the car going when it bumped the other car. In the second group, they asked how fast was the car going when it crashed into the other car. So just that change in word made the group 2 participants think that it was going like 100 miles faster. So it is a lot about framing. But I understand that, we use these personality trait results in the best way possible. I think it becomes really dangerous when we start applying it to a job setting, because I know like a lot of companies have been accused of like hiring their employees based on this test. Like what really does this test tell you if it's if it's so like adaptable? And the other thing is all of them are positive. So I would feel happy had I gotten any of them. And I think the Myers-Briggs unfortunately does that on purpose because, every time somebody takes this test, they make money off of it. They make $20 million a year. So they want people to like everybody likes hearing good things about themselves, right? So of course I'm going to take it and like, oh, this computer told me I'm an innovative inventor with an unquenchable thirst for knowledge. Like that sounds really good. I think that's how it was designed to like pull in people that way.
On the contrary, the more you use the test and the more you research it, the more negative things you are going to find out about your trait. Like, I'm not going to say my thing because we're guessing at the end, but I remember, like, when I first got my result, I was like, oh, I'm positive, I'm outgoing, I'm an idea person, I inspire people. That's awesome. Like, that's awesome for me. And then, like, I researched, like, more things, and it's like, oh, I'm like clingy and I'm overbearing and I'm like, I can't get ideas out of my brain. And it's like, ooh, that's not that good. And it's just really important to like take everything with a grain of salt with these tests. And it's also, it goes back to people being dynamic. We all have good and positive traits. And it's about kind of using our perspective to find those traits.
You can definitely make a good thing sound like a bad thing, or a bad thing sound like a good thing. It's, I know, like when I was younger, when all of us were younger, there was this like post going around of like positive descriptions of Hitler, and they were true. They were like charismatic, 5'10", blue eyes, loves to paint. And it's like, and they're like, this is about Hitler. Like you can definitely twist those things. I haven't really done that much research into mine. And I don't necessarily think that I'm extroverted, even though the test says I am, which goes into like, I really don't think that's true, which goes into why, like how those things decide to choose what to give me and how that would affect me in a office space. Like Ria said, like if I had to turn that in when I don't feel that way, and I don't believe that I'm the most extroverted person, looking at how that office perceives me will affect me.
One thing that I think about is that's the reason I like the Enneagram test so much, is because with it gives you what number you are, and then it gives you 2 other numbers. And those 2 other numbers are what you are at your best self and what you are at your worst self. And I think that's really important, that lays it all out on the table right when you get it. Because it's not something that it doesn't sugarcoat it. At least to me it didn't. It didn't sugarcoat it. It gave me straight what I needed to hear. It said, and it did get me pretty accurately, but it helped me learn like what I need to do to get to my best self. And that's the reason that most of us do take these tests, or at least that's what I was doing, was I was trying to figure out, 1, how I could help myself become a better person, and 2, what I need to do to get myself out of a situation when I'm at my worst.
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes you don't know what to do, and sometimes those tests can give you like a little help. It's like how to help a type blank when they're feeling down. Like, it sounds stupid, but sometimes it works. So that's why that's my favorite personality. But
so what exactly does wing mean?
So Enneagram, kind of like simply put, is I definitely don't think I'm as knowledgeable as Lindsay. I know a bit about it because I'm trying to understand it myself. I'm in the process of learning. So Enneagram, you have your main type, and then you have a wing, which is kind of, my understanding is it supports that type. And the way the wings work is, so whatever your type is, like I'm just going to throw a number out, like 9. So there are 9 different types. So then your wing is, you're either going to be a 9 wing 8 or you're going to be a 9 wing 1. It's the numbers that surround it, and your wing helps support your type. And anything you want to add, Lindsay?
So, like, for example, for number 4, okay, at their best, they're an advisor, and at their worst, they're a perfectionist. Like, the way the lines point, it can show you your worst and your best, and it links to, so it looks like a little triangle, like a weird little triangle or like a star. The point of the wing is to not put you in a box.
It's just a slightly bigger box.
Yeah, so that's the basic gist of it. And
yeah, it's super similar to Myers-Briggs, and just like the archetypes, kind of, they have a lot less than Myers-Briggs. I think you said they have 8 or 9 compared to Myers-Briggs is 16.
mm-hmm.
So potentially meaning that Myers-Briggs may account for a more diverse range of personalities. Although, I mean, I don't think there's 16 personalities. I think there's 7.48 billion personalities. But
the difference with Myers-Briggs and Enneagram is Myers-Briggs is like hyper specific, whereas Enneagram is a little bit more vague. And I think that's why a lot of people do prefer the Enneagram, because unlike Myers-Briggs, that can like literally, like, when you get your test, depending on which platform you take it on, it'll like give you your whole life story. Like, you were probably bullied as a child, where like Enneagram is something where it's like you can just adapt it to you. And I do think that's a positive about the Enneagram versus the Myers-Briggs, because Myers-Briggs has a lot of stuff backing it. Like, there are these things called the cognitive functions, and there are 8 cognitive functions. And similar to Enneagram, instead of numbers, it's with letters. And so, for example, like, you're at your best when you're using this function, and you're at your worst when you're using this function. And yeah, it's similar to Enneagram in a lot of ways, but I think Enneagram is a little bit more adaptable to people and allows for a bit more flexibility.
Zodiacs are also like Myers-Briggs in a retrospect of, if you look at it just as your sun sign, you're just going to get, a little basic, you ate today, but if you look at like your moon sign, your Mars sign, your Lilith sign, it's going to tell you that you stubbed your toe when you were 3, and you did stub your toe when you were 3. So it's really one of those
very, I think astrology breaches, I mean, it goes beyond, it can really be seen as a very simplified version of those two things, of someone being like, you like chocolate. You're like, oh, yeah, like, you like the sound of rain. Or it can go into a lot of faith-based stuff, because a lot of faiths around the world have a history of astrology. And that's kind of been, I'm trying to look for a nice word, turned into something that it's not. And capitalized on by other people, kind of like with, at least like as someone born in a Hindu family, it's fun to go to like Books A Million and see like all of the like chakra candles, and you're like, oh, that's not cool. When the Maslow's like hierarchy of needs, it's basically just a whitewashed version of the chakras, and like looking at your faith kind of just like broken apart in a way that's not accurate. But I personally, as like in my family, we don't go into like all the astrology stuff. I have no idea what any of that means, but a lot of people do, and I'm not entirely sure about the mechanics of how that works. I think Lindsay knows much more about it than I do, about like with how different like planets and all that do work. But a lot of that has a very, very long history of religion and culture and tradition.
It does, and I just want to attest to something that you were talking about. I think astrology is like the universal predictor. Thousands and thousands of years ago, this is how humans kind of shaped some of their ideologies. My parents, the day that they were married was determined by the position of the moon and the sun. Just about the zodiac signs real quick. Again, I tend to be skeptical about these kinds of things, but that doesn't stop me from once a week on Snapchat, it'll be like your weekly horoscope. I'm on that. Like, and on TikTok, one will be like the 4 signs that give the best hugs. Like, I'm gonna watch that whole thing and see if mine is on there. So it's, even though like I may not like exactly believe blah blah blah. And maybe that's because I just don't know that much about it, but it's still super interesting to me.
And I think that's a lot of why, like, it's become so, I don't know if this is the right word, sensationalized. Like, y'all know what I mean? Like, it's everywhere. Like, I go on like the explore page for like Instagram or whatever, and it's like tons of any before I was even into like all this stuff, it was like Enneagrams and Myers-Briggs, and I see people like reposting their zodiac stuff like all the time. And I feel like instead of something where it's like, oh, this is like interesting psychology, now this is entertaining. And it's really become more of like a form of entertainment than anything.
Yeah, I feel like we take it for granted, honestly. Like we take it as like this fun little gimmick where, haha, can you guess what I'm thinking? But like I don't know, I feel like it should be used as a tool to help ourselves and to help people around us. It should show us how to like communicate with one another and things like that. Like for example, on Snapchat, they now have this little thing where you can tap on someone's zodiac sign and see all of your compatibility. And did I read that? 100%. But did I think it was true? No. And let me tell you why. It's because people are their own personalities. Just because your sun is a Capricorn doesn't change, like that's not going to do anything because your moon sign, all of it connects into itself. And so you can't just take one part of it. Like you can't just say, oh, my sun sign is this. That's not going to help you anything. You're not going to relate to any of the means either. It takes all of you, not just one number, not just what is it, 4 letters. It takes all of you, and it breaks you down pretty well. It goes into your deepest, darkest fears, which is great until it isn't.
Like what Lindsay was saying about going too deep into like zodiac and reading too much into things. I remember when we were first discussing the idea for this podcast, we like went around and we said our zodiac signs. And like now I think Lindsay's like the best. Like she's so funny. Like I love talking to Lindsay, but I said my zodiac sign, she's like, oh, those are the worst. And it's like, but now me and Lindsay, like we're tight, like we're cool. But like I think it's a great example of like just how like some things are like you're gonna automatically think that like that is something you are not compatible with when we are people and we're not like a label or a box to fill, like Iona was saying earlier.
And that's definitely like what Rhea was talking about earlier, and what Lindsay was like, hinting at with how like astrology isn't like well the way that most people know of astrology. It's not just like one thing about you. It's like again, literally 12 things about you, and some of those other 12 things can cancel out things you're like, oh, that's not me at all. But I think it's been so much easier for at least in the past like 50, 100 years for people to be like, oh, it's much easier to market this one thing, so we're just going to market this one thing because people don't have the attention span to dive into it unless they're really interested, and then you can, and you can gain something, a lot of things from it. Like I know that Claire said this the last time we had this conversation, but it's really more like about looking at, oh, okay, that fits, that works for me, but also being like, oh, that's something that I don't like about myself, and I should be more careful when I approach people with this problem or really talk about this thing, and just kind of understanding like where do I have to have boundaries for myself and where do I need to break boundaries. But it is funny like what you were saying about Lindsay reacting to you, because I know that like I I just saw this meme about like of someone, like it was like a Twitter conversation, and they were like, they were flirting, and then one person was like, oh, well, what's your sign, and the guy was like Scorpio, and the girl went, don't take this personally, but, and then she blocked. And that's funny. But when you're like, oh, is that really funny? Like, is that like someone's taking that generalization of like you think like there are 12 types of people, 12, just 12, and that's yeah.
Well, there's actually a 13th sign that changes everything.
That changes everything. That's so funny. That's so funny. Because I'm one of those people that's like, I don't care what NASA says. I am going to stick to what I was. But that kind of defeats the purpose of that 13th sign, which its window is like 5 days.
Well, also the thing that they said about the 13th sign is that it only starts with people after 2009 or something.
Yeah. So I just wanted to pose this question to y'all. Like, what do you have to say to the defense of zodiacs? Like, it's kind of crazy that the day which you were born, the day which you were conceived could dictate so much of your life.
Yeah, there are 14 different signs for zodiac. And I was like, there's no way. And I took the test, and then when I started reading about it is what made me believe. Like, it's not like I believe it. It's I know that if it gets me, because like it's to the point where it's so accurate that you can't, like, it's not something that you can twist.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was like specific thing that, I mean, I guess you could read into it, but it's just like it's like if you go into like if you take the chart test and you
Mm-hmm.
give and all that, it will tell you everything. And so it's when I read that's what made me 100% into zodiacs and like not take them as a joke anymore.
Mm-hmm. And I think
Yeah,
there's definitely a difference between like sensationalized astrology and like when you go to the library, like and there's like, oh, this is a book on Gemini. Like that's not how anything works. Because like what Lindsay's talking about is like literally like centuries of like people putting work together on like what their belief is in that system and their belief in the stars and their belief in um planetary movements and how that affects people, which does go into some people's faiths. Not that I necessarily believe in that on a faith-based level, but like Ria, my parents' marriage was also on a specific, had to be undone at a specific day, specific time. Like it's not like it's, and I mean into that, which is a small tangent. It's not like there's only one time in your life that you can get married. There's like literal like auspicious days, like throughout years that those two people can like they need to get married on that day for a good omen. And it's funny because our parents are both well educated people. Like these are completely like people are doing this in tradition. Like they don't necessarily believe in it, but they're going to still do it. So that kind of ties back into astrology because I know that modern astrology, even the one that Lindsay is talking about in faith, can be in a lot of different faiths. Um, and there are a lot of different cultures and like places where culture and faith intermix. So that's really what my defense of it is. It's more of a do you believe it? If you do, it does apply to you. That makes
Yeah, I
sense.
kind of understand, Iona, the correlation between faith and largely these things. I mean, even including personality tests, there's some level of faith that you have to have in order to use them in a proactive and productive way. A thought that I had was, I wonder if you compare zodiacs and Myers-Briggs and just map up those results, like are, for example, Scorpios more likely to be this personality trait?
I did that actually. I looked up my Enneagram number and I said, what are they most likely to be? And it was what I was. And like it all lined up pretty well. So it happened with me. I don't know if that's just because it's just who I am, but with me, like everything lined up.
That's interesting. Let me check that. Well,
Yeah.
since I already told anyone listening to this podcast, I said I was an 8. What
Mhm.
is an Enneagram 8 most likely to be?
Yeah. Or just it's interesting to do on an individual level, but also like if you compare every single person who's take the Myers-Briggs, like is there a significant correlation with their sign? That'd be interesting. And then also on the topic of signs, I think that we really overlook the moon a lot. Like the moon is so cool. Like I love the moon, but I feel like I don't hear about it as much as like the sun.
No, definitely. The moon sign is about your inner self. And that's who you are and that's who you like cuz like the sun sign is who you are, how you're perceived by other people. The moon sign is who you actually are. Look at your moon sign if you want to look at a meme for your zodiac sign. That's all.
I
Yeah.
think it's really interesting because I started learning about zodiac from class at school, a mythology class, and we talked about different religions in that class because if you examine religion objectively, it's technically mythology. So we talked about zodiac as one of our units, and my sun sign is like one of the most optimistic signs, and then no, my sun sign's the most optimistic sign, and my moon sign's the most pessimistic. So that was like really funny to me because it all canceled out. And then my rising sign was just random. So I think it's really interesting learning about your other signs and how they affect your sun sign.
Sorry, hold on. I'm curious. What are your Hogwarts houses?
I'm a Hufflepuff.
That makes sense.
Iona's a Ravenclaw.
No, I'm not.
Gryffindor.
Hmm?
Are you
Gryffindor.
Slytherin, Iona?
I'm a Slytherin.
Yeah, okay.
I can't not get Slytherin. Rhea, you're either a Slytherin or a Ravenclaw.
Ravenclaw, yeah.
Ravenclaw. Lindsay, are you a Ravenclaw or a Slytherin?
Are you a
So,
Gryffindor? Are you a Gryffindor, Lindsay?
thing is when I took one of those tests that like it was like you like to read books, you like to beat people up, you like
Oh,
and so I would pick the one that was Ravenclaw because I like the color blue. So I don't know if I actually am, if I'm being honest.
I took the Pottermore one where it's like choose sun or stars, or would you take a wooded path or a river path or something like that?
I like that one a lot because it's. I mean, they definitely didn't like it's. It's also from the source of that, so like, yes, but it's also you can't necessarily like pick which exact traits you want because like you said, like the random quizzes that you find are so funny. They're so funny because it's just like I like studying. I like doing drugs in the park with my friends. Like that's I wonder which one's which.
The thing that annoys me about that is like even when this is random, this is not personality related, but then like even with those tests, it's like even in the book we saw people of several different houses have the same exact actions. Like Peter Pettigrew, he was a Gryffindor, and Severus Snape was a Slytherin, and they both betrayed people close to them. So it's like goes back to what we were saying, like just because you have a certain personality type or like a house type, you're not necessarily going to be like everyone in that house. Like Harry, Ron, and Hermione were all Gryffindors, but very, very different people. Hermione loves studying. Harry and Ron never did it. It's all like objective, subjective.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why we wasted our time talking about Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, Zodiac. Like, Harry Potter houses is where it's at.
Okay, so ENFJ is the giver, right? I'm a Slytherin. So like that's funny. That's funny because like those things don't necessarily match in the way like you would describe either of them. Because even like when you try to describe Slytherin positively, it's like ambitious, which is not necessarily what a person described as giver would be. So it's really just like, what do I want to be in that moment? Like, how do I want to describe myself? How do I want to shape my thought processes? Which is what I know that we've all touched on this, but why it's so dangerous for like 11, 12, and 13-year-olds to read these things and honestly be on the internet in an adult shoe. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you want to interact with all these like older teenagers and young adults as a young adult, but you're like 12, so you are trying to fit into a box. You want to fit in somewhere. You want to prescribe yourself to a certain like way of thinking, way of being, and that's where these things become very dangerous because you are impressionable but cognizant enough to be like, oh yeah, no, I'm smart. I know things. And it's like, yeah, you do, but you're not fully a person yet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think it should not ever be used to dictate anything in the real world. Like jobs, like it should be left out of that because there's so much subjectivity in it. But I wanted to go back to the moon thing. I think Isaac Newton proposed this idea that from a scientific perspective, like, you know how the moon affects the changing tides, like it theoretically affects all liquids on the earth, like liquids that are in our body as well. So that, account for, like, I think there's a lot to this world besides what we can see and feel and know about it. I think there is like that, like a fourth dimension almost that is like our soul and our mind, and I think could explain some of that.
That's some third eye stuff right there. But what I was gonna say is also, even if you're older, like, I'm 17, and like if I hadn't known what I know about Myers-Briggs and all that good stuff, like at the beginning I was like, oh, I'm not really like, a Libra, I better start fitting into that, like even at like an older age, people be like, they like crash into you and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm a Scorpio. Like, no, you crashed into somebody. People will take that and they will make, like, so even at an older age, you have to be careful about that because your mind is still moldable well into your oldsies. So it's very important that you take into account the fact that you take the good, you leave the bad. Like you take what you can out of it and do what you can to make yourself better, but don't try to fit explicitly into that box.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I feel like I was definitely guilty of that because, like, the first time I took Myers-Briggs, I was in like the 7th grade. And like middle school is like such a formative time in your life, especially if you like middle school is your cringe phase, like it was for me. And like I remember like the Myers-Briggs, like even to me, it felt almost like it was validating some of my negative traits. And also, I think it's worth mentioning, I was a different type in 7th grade than I am now. And like now I will take the test and I consistently get the same thing. But like I remember like in 7th grade, like I took it twice and got different things from what I am now both times. And they both like definitely validated some negative behaviors of mine. And I feel like as a 7th grader, that was a really dangerous thing for it to do, because then it's like, oh, well, that's not because this is a negative trait. That's because I'm just this. That's what I am. So that's why I do this. I can't help that. Yes, you can help it. It's not you are this way. It's why you are this way. And it's important to remember that a why is not a what.
Yes, I agree with that.
Yeah, that's a really insightful comment. Another test that I just remembered was in 8th grade. We all had to take a career aptitude test kind of thing. I think we've taken those like in high school as well. And be like, do you like to help people? Do you like to sit at a desk for 8 hours a day? You know, like obviously, very obvious, like where they were going with that question. And I thought, like at that time, I had a couple interests. Like I was interested in medicine, I was interested in law. So I'd like unconsciously geared my responses to go there. To my surprise, the career that I was paired with was furniture finisher. Nothing about law, nothing about medicine. A person who takes finished pieces of furniture and puts the clear polish on them. That's my job.
That's what you get for saying you like art, Ria. Bad, Ria. You should have only like studied. Like that's literally, you're literally just trying to, because we had to take that in career prep in high school. And I think we took that in middle school. We took that in elementary school, which is crazy. That's absolutely insane to me that you're going to look at an 8-year-old and be like, take this career aptitude test. You're 8. Because I know I saw this TikTok. Maybe it wasn't a TikTok. Maybe it was just normal, like, because it was a while ago. This girl was like, yeah, all of my friends got like psychiatrist, therapist. I got funeral director. I feel like people take, and this is really going on a tangent, but people, you will do in your life what you need to be doing at that time. You are not necessarily going to be in the career that you like. Not everyone's going to work a job that they're loving all the time. I don't think that's how a job works. But it will fit what you need at that time. There's not necessarily any personality type that's perfect for this or perfect for that. Yes, there are people that are better teachers than others. Yes, there are going to be people who are better at being a doctor than others, better at being a lawyer than others, and those personality does definitely go into those jobs. But like, if you are trying to pay your bills, you are trying to pay your bills.
I have 2 comments to that actually. I'll start off with the funny one so then we can talk about the serious one. But don't feel guilty for laughing about the funeral director thing, because I remember we took it in my 5th grade class, and this one kid got like a masseuse, and we like high key like we bashed that kid for getting that result. We were like, ha ha, Mario got masseuse, and like we just thought that was the funniest thing ever. But the serious comment was, and what you were saying about personality types don't dictate jobs. I remember my personality type, something my personality type's supposed to be amazing at is teaching. And I do think that I'm actually like a good teacher. I thought about going into education at some point, then I was like, nah. But my favorite teacher I've ever had was an ISTP, which is they're supposed to be the worst at teaching. And she was like the best teacher, and she was so good at it. And it's just kind of like what you were saying, personality types don't dictate jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if they did, and like Rhea was saying, that messes things up.
Yeah. Because then you have like real implications for something, that's debatable, I guess. But Claire, I'm interested to know more about your essay. Like, what exactly did you talk about?
So in my essay, it said talk about something that fascinates you. And I am like fascinated by Myers-Briggs, y'all. Like, I like know all the stuff. I've done all the research. I follow all the accounts on Instagram. And I talked about Myers-Briggs, and it was basically like a weird psychoanalysis of myself and like why I am into Myers-Briggs. And a lot of it, and I think this is where it got dangerous, like as we were talking about, they can be dangerous when young people get into them. I was at a school where I wasn't really fitting in, and I was bullied about that, like while I was there for like a few years. And then it was like, I took this test, and it was like, oh, then you don't fit in probably. And it kind of like, it explained myself to me in a way that made a lot of sense. And then I met these other girls at a summer camp who are literally my best friends now, like no joke, we talk all the time, and they had the same type. So I basically just did a self-exploration and compared it to like Myers-Briggs and why I got into it. And then I did talk about how it got a little dangerous, and now I'm literally something different than what I tested as in middle school, because I have matured since being a 7th grader, and I'm a completely different person now than I was in middle school, because we get out of situations and we move to different areas, and all these things shape who we are. So you have to kind of take everything like that with a grain of salt, and you have to know that who I am now is not who I'm going to be in 5 years. And that's okay. It's okay if your type changes, and it's okay to not be that label you thought that you were. And it's okay to not even want to put a label on yourself.
Yeah, I'm certainly happy that I am nowhere close to my middle school self anymore. So thank God.
Claire, are you an INFP?
You're very close. I'm not. You're very close though.
Okay, so y'all.
It's an INN. I know you're an INN. I know you're an. Your smile says yes. No, it does not.
I don't know. I don't feel introverted vibes from any of you.
Maybe not. Yeah, maybe not introverted, but I'm getting intuitive. And I'm getting perception.
Yeah. What's
Are
the
you ENFP?
Yes, I'm ENFP.
Yeah, let's go.
What's that label called?
So there are also, depending on which test you take, there are several different labels, and the two that I identify closely with are the campaigner and the inspirer. And my type can also be called the advocate, the campaigner. And it's using your extroverted intuition to identify the needs of others, and then your introverted feeling to go and campaign for other people and kind of advocate for them and stuff like that.
Okay, so that means that you're a type 2.
I am a type 2.
And you're hold on, wait, you're a wing. Honestly, that could go either way. I'm gonna say 3, but I could very well be wrong.
I'm a wing 3. You're on a roll. Do you want to guess my zodiac?
I already know your zodiac, though. I think, aren't you? Because it doesn't fit with your personality. Because if you were to tell me that, like right now, I would say your personality vibes. So, like maybe it's like your moon in Aquarius or something like that.
My rising is in Aquarius.
I'm so good at this.
I'm not gonna lie. I looked up most likely to like not fit in because you said that, and I got INFP. So
you were so close. And for those who obviously, like Lindsay, do not have prior knowledge of my zodiac sign, that is apparently the worst. My sun sign is a Cancer, and then my rising is Aquarius, and my moon is Capricorn.
I know Ria's zodiac, but I've also like known her like my entire life, so I don't know if that's fair.
Yeah, dude, look up what personality type is a masseuse.
Lindsay, I don't know what zodiac you are, but you don't seem like someone born in the spring. You seem like someone born in the summer or the fall.
Yeah, you're right. She's
a Libra. She admitted it earlier.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Oh my god. Okay, what I said what I was earlier, but probably got an extroverted one. I'm sure yours I feel like you begin with an E and end with a J.
Here's what I think. She said something earlier about being a skeptic. So I'm maybe thinking S because intuitives are very faith and morals based. And it's kind of like the unknown and the unseen. Granted, I do not know you that well, Ria.
I'm 3.
It's funny.
You're
That
3?
makes sense. Because you talk a lot about like women in STEM, and I don't know, that feels like a very ambitious.
Yeah.
So I can see you the 3.
I'm 3 and 2.
I was still off.
3 2.
That makes sense. Because, like, I've known you, like, I mean, background for anyone listening, me and Ria, we're family friends. So, like, I've known her for a very long time, and I do agree with that.
Oh, yeah. Let's guess Ria's Myers-Briggs before we...
Yeah, Ria, what's your Myers-Briggs?
Wait, can I guess?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, are you ESTJ?
TJ.
TJ.
She said...
Question mark.
No.
Ooh.
Do you start with an E and end with a J? That's a yes.
No, I don't.
No, okay. Do you start with an
ESFP?
E? Okay. So
Are you
E.
an S at all?
Huh?
Are you an S at all?
No.
Oh, I don't know you that well. Are you the same as? Are you ENF? Are you ENTP?
Yep.
That makes sense. That does make sense.
Yeah, it's listed as the debater.
Yep, the debater. That's what I was about to say. And you were saying you were a skeptic.
Yeah.
Type 5 is investigative thinker, so I was like skeptic.
I don't think you guys understand.
Type 4 is like individualist, and I was like, okay, we can just slap that right there. And
Maria will be one a drunk uncle anytime. So like,
Oh,
I don't think you guys
sorry.
understand.
True story. But like, I identify with that, but like at the same time, I mean, like of course, like this is a discussion. I'm not gonna come off as super, emotional here, but I mean, I think I can be like super emotional, and like a little bit of the like you're saying, it's the one that like champions other people's rights. Which one is it called? Like a defender, kind of advocate.
Are advocates, and they're very for other people because of that extroverted intuition and picking up on other people's needs. And then everything after EN is kind of how you choose to advocate.
That makes sense.
Okay, so my college essay, like, since we kind of talked a little bit about that, is about like the importance of different perspectives. Like I think I saw it as like Iona, Lindsay, and Claire, you have a lens, right, in your eyes that like makes you see the world in a certain way, and that way is a little bit different than I see it, but it's still okay, and it's still as valid as anyone else's. And our job is, especially in politics, we're trying to convince other people they're wrong and trying to push our ideology, but that's not productive, and that doesn't really accomplish anything. Rather, we should try to understand how other people are looking at the world, and like essentially my end goal is just to like put every single lens on top of each other and look through that, so then like the world as it is kind of. But I and a lot of things that I said and a lot of things that I like, quote unquote argued for in today's podcast, I don't necessarily believe, but I just want to get that idea out there. Like I think playing the devil's advocate is really, really good when done correctly. Just like the more I have, the more like innovative we can be, the more good we can do.
I do agree with that.
And that's something I touched on in my essay. It's like we were talking about personality types and jobs, like different personality types, if depending on whether or not you believe in them, are good at things that I'm probably not good at. Like I have the hardest time staying focused. You can say it's the intuition and perceiving. I just have a hard time doing it. Yet my mom, who's an ENFJ, is like really good at staying focused. So we tag team together well. And like the different facets of people's personalities help make one functioning world.
Lindsay, now I want to know well, we know you're a Libra.
I am.
I'm removing myself because me and Lindsay have talked about this, so I might not guess too much for Lindsay.
Okay, that's fair. I think that realistically you're an ambivert, like in that sense. I don't think
But what?
Amber what?
Yeah, what?
Peace.
But, I think that you probably lean, maybe on a quiz that you took yourself, you might lean towards introvert, or if you'd taken a longer quiz, it would have given you an extrovert. So if you took the long one, I think that we all took, it would have been extrovert.
So the thing is that I am a type of person who's really loud when you first meet me, and I'm very out there, but when you get to know me, I'm super quiet, I'm super chill. I don't like talking that much. I like to stay by myself a lot. So I'm an I.
You're an I. Okay, interesting.
But I'm an
not.
Oh, there's that. I'm an amni what? So you know.
And what?
What? So
it's important to note that as far as Myers-Briggs go, personality does not dictate extrovert or introvert, it's energy. So for like I know someone who is like the most outgoing, bubbly, like loud person out there, but they're an introvert because they don't actually get energy from being around people. They recover from alone time. So it's introversion and extroversion, then it's sensing and intuition, then it's feeling and thinking, then it's judging and perceiving.
Okay,
Oh, then
feeling.
you're an INFJ.
me?
No,
Yeah,
she's not.
that was close.
Sorry, ISFJ. That's what I meant.
Yeah, ISFJ. Yeah. And I'm described as the defender.
Dedicated and warm. Always ready to defend their loved ones. I sure hope I'm one of your loved ones, otherwise, I guess.
There you go. I'm ready for you. I'm ready.
You're a letter off from being a masseuse, Lindsay.
Do it. Life, it'll be there. It'll be there.
Wait, what's your Enneagram? I don't know much about Enneagram, so I need to look at that.
Are you a 6?
I am a 6.
Defender goes well with loyalist, I think.
No, and it all lines up. Libra, Defender, 6. Like you know, it all lines.
Anxious, Lindsay?
Hmm?
Are you anxious?
You started. Who thinks of every situation before it happens.
It's funny. I'm sorry. Like one of this looked at it gave also not like everything you want to hear. So, but
yeah. And
what
it's
do
like,
I not want to hear about myself?
Yeah, no. And one of the things fixes it's like, yeah, you're like extremely anxious. Like you need to chill out, and it's like you over constantly. And I'm like, you know what? You're right, but you didn't have to tell me that.
Mine says that I'm confrontational, and I think I agree.
Wait, so quick question, Ria. What is your Enneagram and Zodiac?
So Enneagram is 3, with 2. And then do y'all want to guess Zodiac?
I know your Zodiac, so I can't.
Leo?
No.
Okay, I don't
Yeah, it's hard to guess. I'm Cancer.
Really?
See, I think it's really interesting that me and Lindsay, who are very into personality types, all of our stuff lines up as far as personality stuff goes. And then Rhea and I, who aren't that into it, none of their stuff matches.
And that might be why we're so into it, just because of how it lines up. And that's a really interesting thing to me, and why I looked into it so much is because everything lined up so perfectly. Because like Libras are like the the mediators there, and this is just sun sign, nothing deep. But mediator 6 is like the guardian, and then like the other one, I'm not big on Myers-Briggs, but the defender, like it all lines up very well. And
yeah, so mine is ENFP, which is campaigner, and as soon as I said advocate for others, Lindsay was like, "You're 2." And then after that, everything just kind of fell into place really easily. So I'm an ENFP, I'm a 3-wing 2, and no, 2-wing 3, and I'm a Cancer.
And then it's interesting because I know that me and Ria, I know we did argue kind of both sides of it, but we're us, like many people, we don't really necessarily want to lend ourselves to a faith until we really do research on it. And you guys have done your research, so you can lend yourself to that faith. So I think it's important to understand what you're getting into before you get into it, which I do appreciate that all of us do. because you guys have obviously like taken different tests, done this different times. We're talking about it from like an understanding, like a topical understanding of things and a topical understanding of personality tests. But that's
Yeah.
But this has been a really good conversation. I think that she will just. Well, I need to wrap it up. Okay. So that was cool. We have. I have forgotten what we are. I know, Claire, you are a. You're.
I just said it.
You just said it. Part of it's a 2. I know part of it's a 2.
ENFP, 2 wing 3, Cancer.
Cancer, yes. I am an
FJ.
ENFJ. ENFJ. A wing 2, Gemini. Ria is a Cancer. 3. Well, you're a 3 wing 4? 2. Other way. 2. 3 wing 2. I forgot what the other thing was.
Debater.
ENTP. She's an ENTP.
My brain's not working anymore. Lindsay. You're a Libra.
Libra, and I'm a 6, and I'm an ISFJ.
That's good.
So from now on, we will refer to each other only by those names.
Yes, all together actually.
It's a float. Yeah.
It's been a good night. Thank you for listening.